Welcome to So and So, brought to you by Bernina, made to create. I'm Meg Goodman, and you're about to enjoy a casual conversation with a special member of the sewist and quilting community. A conversation about how they got started, what inspires them, what excites them, and their connection to this community. Our guest today is Carina Gardner, who designs fabrics for Riley Blake Designs and has several digital shops for her Cricut, Silhouette, and Sublimation crafters. Carina has an MA and a PhD in design from the University of Minnesota, where she taught graphic design foundations, typography, design theory, and packaging design for 5 years. She left academia in 2008 to design full-time and stay home with her children. Carina was the creative director for the Carta Bella scrapbooking company, and her brand can be found on wallpaper, dishware, jewelry, home decor, and sewing patterns. Her design program, Design Suite, has grown into a thriving creative business that teaches aspiring designers to make their mark and make money. Carina lives in Sandy, Utah with her husband, 3 children, 2 cats, and 1 dog. And in her spare time, she enjoys traveling and trying all kinds of new food. Carina, hello and welcome to So and So.
Hi, Meg. I'm so happy to be here.
This is great. We've been excited about doing this episode ever since we got to meet you, and we've got some really fun things to talk about today. I want to jump right in and ask the important question: how did you learn to sew?
I learned to sew by um, sneaking downstairs into my mother's little nook where she had her sewing machine and just sewing. She didn't know at the very beginning that I was doing this. So I was surprised when I didn't get in trouble. She kind of was like, fine, go for it. I
Mm-hmm.
broke a lot of needles. I think I broke that machine a couple of times,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a definite trial and error, which I think honestly is the best way to learn how to sew.
How old were you when you did this?
Oh gosh, 7 or 8.
Uh-huh.
Young enough to not be responsible for being so naughty as to start playing on an expensive machine.
I think there are worse things you probably could have done. Do you remember what some of the first things you made were?
Oh yeah, Barbie clothes. 100%. It was Barbie clothes all day long for me. My mom had a scrap bag. I know a lot of people, their moms have like a scrap bag. And so when my mom let me dig into it, when she realized what I was doing, and just for because I do think it's funny because most people don't realize this about me. My mom is actually Chinese. She's a very little Chinese woman.
Mhm.
And when people see me, they don't realize that I'm half Chinese because my dad was a redhead and white. And so she's just this little Chinese woman. And I didn't know she had an accent growing up. It took me until I was much, much older to realize she even had an accent. But
Mhm.
she would just dig through these scrap bags for me and pull out scraps and just like hand it to me and just send me on my way. It was like, go do all the things because she was a creative. Well, she is a creative. She's an amazing watercolorist
Uh-huh.
herself. And so she just was all about letting me play. I would get in trouble for a lot of things. So I was surprised I didn't get in trouble for this, but it was so amazing. I made so many terrible Barbie clothing items, but it was the most fun. And it's such a strong memory in my brain of being down there as a 7 or 8-year-old sewing all these little dresses for myself.
Now, I want to talk more about you making Barbie dresses when you'd break needles on your mom's sewing machine. You would hide in the closet writing plays. You would doodle as much as you possibly could. It sounds pretty interesting. Tell us more about this creative childhood of yours.
I think it was well, so I was the oldest of 6 kids. So when you have that many children, I think in a household, you have to start getting creative to do things on your own because your parents are very, very occupied. I was thinking about I have 3 kids and we cater to them quite a bit and I'm wondering if we've enabled them too much because I had so much time to sort of just be in my own brain with my own imagination and trying to come up with things with the few resources that I had. I just think it allows for a lot of creativity for children, right?
Mhm. Mhm. So you sewed, but then you got a degree, a master's and a PhD in design. What made you go into design, and how has that affected what you do when you sew?
Well, it's so crazy. So my undergrad degree is actually in communications marketing, and I
Hmm.
wanted to go into advertising. I love advertising. I love the way it laid out, the way it looked. And when I was going to school, so 20 something years ago, um, they had just introduced the Adobe products. We're also still
Mm.
working with Cork. And what I was finding was I was working on this advertising, writing copy, and I was only so at copy. I knew that about myself. And so I tried Photoshop and started laying things out. And I realized, oh, the person who actually does the design work has all the power, not the person who has the ideas, but the person who does the
Mhm.
design work.
Mhm.
And so I applied for a master's degree at the University of Minnesota because, first of all, it was my husband was working on his master's degree at the same time. So we needed to both go to the same school so we could transfer at the same time. And I found this program and they were amazing. They opened arms to me knowing that I didn't have a design undergrad. So I took a ton of classes to catch up on my education there. And what happened was I did all these art minors and I found myself even more creative, more excited because I finally had the tools and came out of school going, okay, now what? I had a newborn baby, I had a 3-year old, I had only 2 at the time, and I wanted to stay home with them, and actually found myself in the scrapbooking world. Well, back
Mhm.
then, scrapbooking had this funny little, crossover into fabric, and I don't know if that exists now. Do you know if it does, Meg?
I don't. I
Yeah, I don't
don't.
know if it really exists the way it did back then.
Yeah. Yeah, I think things have changed a little bit. I'm sure that there still is, a core of people who do this, but I bet it's evolved.
Yeah, I think it has too. There was just this little magical moment in time when I just got in. So I was in digital scrapbooking, and about a couple months later, I got into regular scrapbooking. I got a contract, and about 6 months later, I got a contract for fabric. And actually, the first company that I designed for was Northcott. My creative director there was Ro Gregg, and I was so grateful because she saw something in me that no one else saw. She saw that there was potential, that I was really good at taking art direction. And she really molded me, into
Mhm.
the designer that I'm. That first creative director is everything, I think. And I designed a line called Coquette, and I created my very first quilt out of that fabric. And I didn't know how to quilt. So I'm coming at this at a totally different way than a lot of other people. So what I did was I went to my local quilt shop. It was Elaine's in Salt Lake City. And I took a quilting class and they taught me things I had no idea about. And it was
Yeah,
so
you were
funny.
surprised, weren't you? You thought you knew more.
I totally thought this is what you get when you're a do-it-yourselfer. That's why I'm a proponent of any kind of class because I also took classes for like my sewing machines, like my Bernina machine. I took a class for because they're just things you have no idea that you need to do. Okay, this is such a dumb thing. You guys that are quilters who are listening to this are going to be like, "Oh my gosh!" But the footer, I didn't realize that you can like line up your fabric and it measures it perfectly if you have a 1/4 inch foot,
Mm.
on your sewing machine. S-
Mhm.
it's such a dumb thing, but I had no clue because if you're just sewing along your Barbie dresses, you're just just sewing and hoping it all fits and works together.
And
So
Barbie doesn't complain.
Barbie does not complain. Barbie also has a lot of leeway. Like you can
Mhm.
do all kinds of things with quilting. Those I didn't realize how much cutting mattered. Right. And so,
Mhm.
that those are the things, those core techniques. Her name was, I think it was Susie or Susan who taught me that class. I am forever grateful to her because it really opened my eyes about precision and execution in quilting.
Well, I wanna ask you something. I wanna go back to, when you were at Carta Bella. In the intro, we mentioned that your brand can be found on wallpaper, dishware, jewelry, home decor. How did your brand go from get on these pieces when you worked for a scrapbooking company?
It is funny. I actually had most of those deals before the scrapbooking
Ah,
company.
okay.
So, and I've worked for multiple different entities. I think the really cool thing about working, especially now that I've worked for two different fabric companies, is that you kind of figure out how your creative director works. You also
Mhm.
understand the brand better, right? And what that brand stands for. And it's easier to start adapting as a designer to what works. Now you have your own style, right? Like, so most designers, we have our own style, but in particular, all the home good stuff, the print stuff, the holiday stuff, it came from a fabric line. I designed a line called Songbird for Riley Blake. And Deseret Book, which is they have about 30 independent stores in Utah, they sent me an email out of the blue and said, "We see this line. It's in our quilt shops. We love it. Would you ever design for us?" And
Nice.
I said, "Sure." Right. I mean, how often does that happen? I don't think it does very often at all. So I got very lucky and entered into an agreement with them where they started producing Carina Gardner branded product.
Mhm.
Now, I don't do it right now because we're pretty busy with our program and we have memberships and stuff like that. But it was such a lovely way to take that creativity like to a totally different level.
So, when you were creative director for Carta Bella, what does a creative director for a scrapbooking company do, and how did you become the creative director for them?
So that's an interesting story because I transitioned from my mind's eye into Carta Bella, and I actually took like about a year break because I was trying to contemplate what my next step was. I had a feeling that I was supposed to do something bigger in scrapbooking. Um, I I didn't know what it was. I hadn't quite figured it out, and I kind of started thinking about designing and creating my own scrapbooking company. But before that happened, I got reached out to from the creative director at Echo Park, and they said, "Are you designing for anyone right now?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And so I teach a design program, and I tell them all the time, networking is everything. And I've already told a couple stories here where networking has been everything, but
Yeah, it
this is
is.
definitely one of those networking moments where they didn't need one designer. They needed lots of designers. Well, I knew lots of designers and I myself, of course, was designing and they said, what's your plan? And I said, well, I'm thinking about starting a company. I'm sorry that would be competing with you guys, but I'm really considering it. And they said, would you ever consider creating a company with us that was a sister company to Echo Park? And I said, now that's interesting. And I've never been given that kind of opportunity before. And it meant I didn't have to worry about shipping, distribution, sales, all the stuff a designer doesn't want to do. Right.
Sure.
And so I entered an agreement with them and we created Carta Bella around me. It was a really interesting setup because all the designers and all the design work went through me. So I basically created a design agency within that company that provided all the design work for that company.
Now, you currently have digital shops for Cricut silhouette and sublimation crafters. Tell us what that is, and what do you do?
Oh my gosh. I think this is like the best kept secret about design is that you can totally make lots of money on the internet just doing what you know how to do so well as a designer. And so I actually have 8 shops all over the internet. I'm trying to think if that even includes my own shop. I don't know that it does, where I design all kinds of different things, Cricut files, silhouette files, sublimation files, clip art files, anything that people might be able to use. Digital scrapbooking that really were previous fabric lines will end up in that as well. And that is actually one of the core pieces of my company's income, my design business's income. And I love it. Oh my gosh, it's so fun.
Now, you were talking about all the things that you do. You also have Design Suite, where you teach aspiring designers to make their mark and make money. I know our listeners are going to want to know about that.
It's kind of almost a secret program, which is funny because I do talk about it a little bit on my Instagram feeds, but that it is really different than anything you're going to find out there because since I come from an academic background where I taught graphic design, as a professor at the University of Minnesota, and then I've had this interesting experience as a creative director, I come at design business with the thought that you've got to have a great design educational background, but you also have to have a bit of a business background. You have to understand how sales work and how money works. And so our program is so much longer than anything you will find out there. Most programs or courses are, a couple of months long or even 6 months long. We have a year-long program plus the ability to stay in longer because, I think of design as a 4-year degree. To smush it into 4 years was incredibly intense.
Hmm.
But the other thing that we do that's really different is that I know every single member that's in my program. So I know what their design work looks like. We do critiques just like we would do in a regular university setting. But then I give lots of business advice because business is a part of this, becoming a designer,
Hmm.
whether it's for anything fabric, Cricut, silhouette. I mean, like all of these different design entities, whether you want to be a book illustrator, all of these things require understanding kind of the sales side and what creative directors are looking for. If you don't understand what creative directors are looking for, very often it's very difficult to pitch and get yourself in.
It's pretty well known that in any industry for entrepreneurs, we come to the table with a skill that we're really good at, but we just don't know how to build a business around it.
Yeah. It's so interesting because there's so much great skill out there. I see designers who are phenomenal who just don't know how to make money.
Well, you're teaching them.
We really try. We have some amazing designers who are learning how to make money, and it's fun. It's really fun, and it's creative in its own way, right? Like I think that we sometimes box ourselves in about what creativity looks like,
Hmm.
where it's just sewing. Well, how many of these? I think of the people who've bought my quilt patterns. They will send me a quilt they've made with my pattern, and I'm like blown away because they've just done such cool things to it. They've
Mm-hmm.
sewn it in interesting ways. They've added colors that I would have never chosen together that look phenomenal. And so I'm a real proponent of creativity in general because I think it takes all of the things that we do in life to that next level.
Hey, it's Julian Collins from Julian Creates. You know that dream studio you have in your head with every machine, notion, and accessory you want? We've all got one, and I just designed mine at BerninaSweepstakes.com. And you can design your own too, and then win it. This is a chance to really create anything that's in your head that you would love to make beautiful creations in. Make sure you're in to win Bernina's Dream Studio 100K giveaway. Design your own dream studio at BerninaSweepstakes.com today. Dream it, design it, win it.
Now, Karina, you read a book on Coco Chanel that had a really profound effect on you, and I want you to tell us about that.
Oh my gosh. I think I have a love affair with Coco Chanel. I can't even remember the name of the book because I ended up giving it to someone else that I thought really needed it. I
Uh-huh.
should go read it again because it's so fantastic. What I love about her is that when everybody was going one way, she was going the opposite way.
Hmm.
When people were look like she was up against like Dior, which who I also adore. But, Dior was like bringing back corsets and making women's figures look a certain way. And she was like, nope, we're going this other way. And she started putting shifts on everybody, and they were shorter and they were cleaner and they were comfortable. And I think that in all good businesses that I see out there, when everybody's going one way, you're going the other way. And you're building something so different, so unique, so valuable that people can't help but want to know what you are doing.
Hmm. Do you have any good sewing stories about the people that you've taught throughout the years, or perhaps a personal experience of your own?
Oh my gosh, I have so many good sewing stories. In fact, actually, can I talk about the last thing I just sewed?
Please.
Okay, so I am a big fan of Jane Austen. I just, oh gosh, Pride and Prejudice. I used it in my AP exam in high school. I I love some Colin Firth. Okay. So I found out in Utah that they have this thing called the Regency Retreat once a year. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so going to that. And I am so dragging my husband to that, which, oh my gosh, was so funny.
That's the
This
best part. I love that.
you should have seen all the husbands at this thing. I mean, they were
Uh-huh.
clearly all get up and go. My husband actually really enjoyed it. But so I got him a whole outfit. And then I didn't have time to sew my entire outfit. Next year, I am going to. But this year, I didn't have enough time. So I bought several different random pieces and I cut everything up and made it all work together to make an outfit. And that's what I really like about sewing, especially in this day and age. Like I bought two random different pieces on Amazon and then ended up sewing them all together and created this totally unique piece because everyone asked, where'd you get that dress? And I'm like, oh, you can't find it. It's several pieces of things that I put together. And we had the best time ever. And I really think that's what sewing is really all about. Like that unique, like for me, sewing this dress was creating that unique experience of going to this Regency ball and having the best time ever because I had sewn this thing that I knew no one else would have. Right.
I think we have a picture of you with your husband that will be on the website accompanying this episode.
Yeah. And for those of you who are Jane Austen fans, if you want to go see, I think I even have a video reel on it on my Instagram feed that you can go check out.
That's great. Now, what about some of the people that you've taught through the years? Do you have any memories of aha moments or things that you might have taught somebody that really changed what they were doing?
Oh my gosh. You know, it is so crazy because I taught a fabric design class maybe 12 years ago, and it's actually produced a lot of fabric designers, which is so fascinating to me.
Hmm.
One of the people on my team, Diane, actually took one of those classes 12 years ago, and she got two fabric lines out of it with a UK company and then kind of lost her way a little bit and then found my new program and was like, I think this is what I need. And we kind of channeled her. It's so funny because she was like, I think I want a fabric line. And then by the time she dug into all of my products and my coursework, she had this huge aha of like, oh, I'm not going after a fabric line. I'm going to go after all these other things. And I think that's the power of really having knowledge of what's really going on in the industries because you can, if you know everything that's happening in the crafting world, the fabric world, then you're going to make informed decisions about how to really change your life or how to really go after what your big dream is after. And we talk a lot about your big dream in my program. I love big dreams. I have big dreams for myself, and I want my designers to have big dreams. And one of the things that helps us create a big dream is knowing what actually fulfills us. What's going to make us happy? What's going to wake us up in the morning? What's going to light us up? And I would say, if not all my designers, a good portion of my designers would tell you that's the thing they get when I'm working with them because I'm going to push them hard. They'll say, well, Karina, all I really want to do is, make $1,000 a year and I want to design what I want. And I'll be like, but what would your life look like if you could make $10,000 a month and, travel wherever you wanted? And they're like, is that possible? And I'm
Hmm.
like, only you know, right?
Sure.
Like only you know. And I'm going to push you hard to see if you can get there.
So you're talking about inspiring others. What inspires you these days?
Oh my heavens. Well, my own designers inspire me. I give low like expectations on things. I'm like, if you can just make this much a month, you're great. But I do these things called accelerated workshops, and I was in one just a couple of weeks ago, and I had all these designers in my program say, "Oh my gosh, I made this many sales this week," or "I just hit my first four-figure month," or I just created 100 products and got them all up and going." And I found myself, I was really, into my own design work for years. Like that was the thing I was doing. I was the creative director, but everything has changed for me. I'm much more addicted to watching other people succeed because that actually makes me feel successful now.
Hmm.
Not even my own design work, just watching other people succeed. It's so powerful because it's life changing, right?
Was there a turning point in your career where you realized that this was giving you more than just what you were doing for yourself?
Yeah. So the program's actually not very old, but what happened was I got bored. And I've run into designers where this has happened, and I have to talk them through it. But I was, I was, I had done a lot of things, and I was like, "What is the next level?" Right? I've been a creative director. I make a lot of money doing this. I love the work I'm doing, but there's gotta be more. It felt like there had to be more, and it took me a little while. I mean, I'm talking about a year of just pondering what was the next step before I created this program where I got to be in the lives of people. Like, not just, a little bit, but my designers will tell you we know a lot about what's happening in people's lives because it affects our creativity and our mojo. And if things are bad at home, or if you're having a rough time, or your mother has slipped and fallen and is in the hospital, that's going to affect your design time, your creative mojo. So kind of changing my own perspective about how, if I was actually in the lives, if I actually understood to some degree, right? I'm super busy. I have hundreds of members. Like, I can't know every single thing that's happening in everyone's lives. But if I knew enough, then we would lead with empathy. We would understand how to get around things, and we would work through those struggles.
So this show's all about community, and I think you're a great example of that. It's not just about sewing or creating or designing, it's about sharing lives with
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's even what quilting, I feel like, has always been about, right? When we
Hmm.
make quilts, I think some of it we make for ourselves, but how many of us really just make quilts for other people?
Right.
We're cutting, we're sewing, we're donating, we're making them for our children. Um, Most of mine get stolen from by my children, especially
Well,
the
that's a
ones with,
good thing.
yeah, with the minky on the back.
Uh-huh.
Um, and really, at the end of the day, it's about that love that we're sharing, that creativity that we're sharing through the sewing and creativity process, right? I just am lucky enough that I get to do that extra level, which is, you know, getting to actually design the fabric along with it.
Karina, what's next for you? What's your dream?
Oh my heavens, we have so many I'm, like, scared to tell you what we have planned for 2023 because
Oh,
it's
please do.
big.
Please do.
Okay, you guys will be the first to know about it. You will see a book out of me very soon, probably in the next couple of months, released. We are Oh gosh, I'm so scared to even tell you guys this because it's still just in the middle of all of its new things, but you will see Carina Gardner-branded rentals, like short-term rentals with Carina Gardner wallpaper, Carina Gardner stuff in it that people will be able to rent out and have an experience. We are moving into certification for our design suite program and creating a design agency. So this really came out of my designers are doing so well. We've been able to get lots of people contracts, freelance work. We're working on right now. One of my designers, I was able to get her. We're we're designing a humongous 40-foot by 8-foot mural for Gymnastics Academy in California,
Oh, wow.
and it's an amazing thing. And it just is the natural evolution when you're building a really good design program that you create really good designers. And we will be creating a design agency so
Mhm.
that people, because I have way more freelance than I can ever do. So it's all getting handed down to designers in my program at this point. So we're kind of building that evolution out, and we're just so excited about it.
Well, this is great because people, who are listening, you've heard it here first.
No,
Um,
you really have.
this is awesome, and thanks for taking that leap and sharing it with all of us. So we know what's next for you, but let's go a little bit higher than that. What's your dream?
Oh gosh. My big dream I would love to make thousands of women financially free, like really financially free.
Hmm.
In my program, we get lots of women who need it very badly, you know? And so, honestly, I've been getting so much joy out of my members. It's hard for me to even think of anything else for myself at this point because I did the big design thing. I feel really great about my design career, and I myself will continually seek out great design contracts. But in terms of just like my big dream, I think my big dream is to make those women just win. And then I
Hmm.
think for my own family, my dream for my family is that all three of my children are amazingly creative business owners, like all three of them.
Do any of them sew?
Yes, a lot. My
That's
2 daughters
great.
sew. My 10-year-old son never has, but my 2 daughters, my teenagers sew a lot, actually.
So we've talked about a lot of things here, and you've told some wonderful stories. Is there any question I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one, Meg.
Hmm.
Um, you know what? I don't think there's a question you didn't ask, but I just want to say this for those of you who, are quilters who are making all the beautiful things and giving it away because it's like giving a tiny little piece of your heart, like sweetly to other people as you're sewing. Is that and those of you who are looking for something more, like you want to design your own fabric, guys, there's lots of ways to do it, right? To mix match the fabrics that you have out there, because at the end of the day, it is really just all about the feeling you get sewing, so that journey of sewing, and then the amazing fulfillment of that end product. And I think at the end of the day, the thing that we're all looking for is that amazing temporary satisfaction that we get when we get that end product, whether it's my Regency dress or the last quilt that I've made or any of the crafting products I've done. It's like that little dopamine hit of getting
Hmm.
something really good finished. And that's really, I think, what we're looking for in our daily lives.
It is on so many levels, right?
Mhm.
Now, I know our listeners are going to want to reach out to you, Karina. So, what's the best way for them to do that?
If you're a podcast listener, I have a podcast called Make and Design with Carina Gardner. Now, it is design related. So if you're a sewer and you're more interested in all of the sewing stuff I do, that will be found on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Carina Gardner. But I would recommend hanging out with me on my podcast if you're interested in design.
That's great. Karina, this has been a wonderful conversation. And I want to thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Oh, I am so glad I got to come. I love Bernina, and my machine is a Bernina. And it that was the other thing that was in her. I didn't take a Bernina class, but I took a quilting class. And when she saw my machine and she saw me sewing on it and she saw all the weird stuff I was doing, she was like, go buy this foot, go buy that foot. And
Uh huh.
it was like magic.
Surprise, right?
So amazing. So I just love that this industry actually, just like design, has all these technical things and tools that make us better crafters, better sewers. So I love that.
That's great. Thank you again for being with us today. Well, there you have it. Another story about someone just like you, someone for whom sewing and quilting is so much more than a hobby. It's a way of life and a connection to something bigger. If you know someone you think has an outstanding story, a story that should be shared on this podcast, please drop me a note to meg@soandsopodcast.com or just complete the form on our website. Be sure to subscribe to, review, and rate this podcast on your favorite platform, and visit our website, soandsopodcast.com, for more information about today's and all of our guests. That's SEWANDSO podcast.com. And finally, I want to thank Bernina for making this program possible. I'm Meg Goodman, and I look forward to you joining us next time on So and So.